Hello fellow Patreon subscribers. I'm doing a video today on drum theory. There was a Patreon member that messaged me wondering how I got the drums together for a story that I uploaded on my Instagram. And I thought I'd just got to sort of go through and talk about the theory behind it, because I'm pretty stoked with the drums on this one. And I may as well just show you what they sound like. Cool, right? So I've just added the shakers from the project. I'll get this out of the way. Just useless junk. So what did I do to kind of get this sound? So here are I'll just put up the group here. So I've got this shaker here, I think. The only bit of processing I've got, I'll say only bit of processing, I've got a little bit of redux on here to get a bit of that bit reduction. So let's turn all this off. Show you what it sounds like. A little bit harsh, so I added a EQ and then this redux here to kind of make it a little bit grainier. And then this auto pan, if you've got headphones on, that's kind of going crazy. And then a bit of chorus just to kind of like muddy up the transients. I know I like adding chorus to stuff sometimes just to kind of like just wash stuff out. So that's the shaker. It's probably the most boring part of this whole thing. Now for the rest of it, I've got this, go to my Digitakt VST over here. I've got this kick, got this break sample. It's only going to show one of the chops there. I've also got this clap, this hi-hat that goes panning around, which is pretty cool. And then this other hi-hat, which I kind of modulate when I was recording to, I was just modulating like the decay. It's pretty hot, bit of overdrive in there to give a little bit of sizzle. Now, I just want to talk about the kind of theory and something that I'd like to share with you about like how I think about drums. When I think about drums, when I think about making music in general, I think of like a 3D image kind of thing. And I've got this really terribly drawn picture that kind of looks like like an eye, but also kind of looks like a someone's bum. I'll just sweep that over here. All right, so let me explain. So when I think of drums, when I think of music in general, I think about how it looks in my head. It helps to visualize it in my head. It just helps me to visualize it in my head. I don't really have anything else to say to that. So what does all this mean? So I've got this like big black circle in the middle, and that's your kick, because that's like, in my head, that's kind of like a pulse. That's like bellowing out. So it's big, it's wide. And then I've also got this, got a few crosses in the middle here, which I'll get to. I've also got this sort of grey leady washy sort of bit, and that grey leady washy sort of bit is the shakers on each side. So there's kind of this like, they're not really like intruding on any of the sounds here, but they're there, they're creating the stereo image, that's what it looks like. Then you've also got these sort of blue little dotty little bits over here, and that's this hi-hat. I'm going to call this hi-hat 1. So that's the one that's kind of going beep, 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 each side. And these red slicing sort of things are the hi-hat, this hi-hat. Now, that sound is kind of, I think of that as like kind of slicing. So when it's like kind of closed up, it's these sort of lines, but when it's real opened up, that's when it goes slicing across the whole image of the sound. That's sitting on top of everything. Although you can't really make it out there, but so that's that basically. And I've made the pen bit, the fact that they're pen and then some bits of grey lead is also significant. So this sort of this sort of grey lead sort of thing is still visible behind this sort of biro blue. You can still sort of like see that because there's contrast, because the shakers are smooth and they're kind of grainy, bit washed out, and then contrasting that kind of grainy washed out sound is like a very quite like clinical digital, almost digital clean hi-hat like that. Very easy to distinguish. And then in the middle here, I've got this sort of big black cross, and that big black cross is the clap. It's hitting right down the middle. It's also sitting on top of this break sample, which is much like the shakers, is kind of grainy, kind of washed out. Now you need to, like, if you're going to be layering stuff on top of each other, you need to have that contrast so that each bit can sort of breathe and complement the other part. So if this break sample had a really hot transient, when it was hitting at the same time as this clap, it's not going to push through. You don't get more by sort of stacking two together. You get more by having two things working together, two layers working together, and filling out what the other one doesn't have. So sometimes what I do as well, let's get away from that kind of evil image. Sometimes what I do is I will bring up the attack on a layered element like that. So I'll kind of like roll it off over. So over here, you've got the amp envelope over here, and I'll sort of like bring it over so that the attack of whatever sample that I'm playing doesn't interfere with the other transient hitting sort of thing. I haven't really done that in this case because the sample itself was actually quite washy anyway, and I've like distorted it, added a bit of bit crushing and all that sort of jazz. So these two actually work quite well together. So if you listen to this without the clap sample, and then this is, let me do that again. This is it without it, and this is it with it on. Pretty, like, it's much of a muchness, but it really does just let it breathe a little bit more, and they do kind of complement each other. So when you think about contrast, you think about analog, you think about digital, you think about dirty, you think about clean. So it's the kind of way that, like, it's pretty simple when you sort of speak about it like that. The other thing as well to note is that with drums, it's really, I think of drums, especially for dance music, and if a lot of people that are subscribing will probably be into dance music or making dance music, so this is applicable to you. This whole idea of clubs only having like mono systems, or, you know, I'm not sure if you've ever heard that before, but it really helps to have drums, or really any element like that you're putting into a track, start off in mono. Like as just like as a general rule, and it will help you fucking heaps. Because a lot of samples that I'll download, they'll all have this like stereo treatment, and then if you have stereo stuff on top of stereo stuff on top of stereo stuff, it just comes out in this like washy crap. And I listen to it when I'm listening to dance tracks. One I was listening to the other day, and you put headphones on, and you've just got this kind of weird wide impactful wall of sound, which doesn't really have that, doesn't hit as well. So I'm very proud of my drums. I stick to mono as often as possible. And then when I'm moving away from mono and trying to like have things, when I'm moving away from having things down the guts, then I might try panning or do some random panning or something. But very rarely will I do like a stereo effect. And the only time I've done that with this shaker, because in the track that I was making, there weren't really that many stereo images, and I kind of just wanted it to be, just kind of worked for it basically. But shakers are probably one of the very few things that I'll just keep panned, like, not panned, but like stereoized or whatever. But everything else will probably just be down the middle or just kind of panned or whatever. But I will never ever have a clap that's got a widener on it or anything like that. Maybe I'll modulate like a hi-hat like this, so that every time the decay is like opening up or whatever, it'll it'll like widen that kind of sound, like maybe like a wide hi-hat to kind of like slice through or something like that. But if it's like a vital element to the groove of the track, I will keep things down the guts. But that's just me. You can see how you go. But I think also part of the reason why like I'm really happy with these drums is because the Digitakt only does things in mono, so you really have to think about how the sound. You can really spread a lot of crap over the stereo image. But if you're only focusing on this like one narrow bit of sound, every element has to complement each other. Otherwise, they just won't work. So some people even do their whole tracks and they'll just keep it in mono the entire time, like on the master bus, and will then start like once they're like kind of like happy with the track, they'll like move it around and then they'll start like stereoizing or like panning stuff or whatever. But keeping things in mono makes sure that like everything, or just helps you make sure that everything is sort of like complementing each other and it's not getting lost or whatever. Yeah, so that's kind of, so let's listen to the beat again. Now in terms of like processing, I've got the hats with like a fair bit of overdrive on them. Like I've actually cranked it fully, but that's just because the sample was quite quiet. The kick has a little bit of overdrive just because I wanted to. It's like a looped sine wave. If you want a sick kick sound, like looping a sine wave and then filtering it. Like you can have a look at these like filter. What this filter looks like over here, and like the amp envelope over here, if you want to try and like replicate it. But one of the best kick sounds, like I use it on everything now. Like it's better than any like 909 sample, just because it's pure sine. The break sample, I've got a little bit of, I think maybe some like bit reduction on there, as well as some sample rate reduction, just to like grimy it up. And then as for the clap, yeah, another thing as well is also filtering. And I don't even mean like crazy EQing or whatever, but I just mean like low pass, high pass, just something simple. This I've rolled off like a bit of the high end on that, and if you listen to what that sounds like just without it rolled off, it's quite it's a bit nasty, but it also just means that there's a bit more, when I roll it off, it also means there's a bit more room for all this sort of, all that nice little high-end tickly stuff for your brain, and also for the shakers as well. But on top of that, the clap also has a bit of high-end content to it as well. So you're kind of just like pasting these images on top of each other that are like complementary to each other. Yeah, so that's kind of like my theory for drums and also just for music in general. Yeah, if you have any other questions, let me know. But yeah, pretty happy with these. Okay, now I'm just fucking around. Yeah, so that's just a bit of drum theory. Like, also another thing is like compression for these drums. I haven't actually done much, I don't think. I've done like a 50-50, was it up on here? I've never really used the VST thing for this, but I don't think it's gonna come up. Effects master, compressor. I don't even think that's like triggering anything. I think I'm just like lifting up the signal a little bit. So you don't even have to worry about the compression on that. There's like no process, pretty much. But yeah, I like to think of like the hierarchy of things you should be dealing with when like your drums aren't sounding right. And in my experience with working with a Digitakt and working with an MPC, is that you can very easily make stuff sit really well, tightly, if you've got your levels correct, if you've got the sample selection correct, or like correct, if you've got them like gelling well. There's no correct answer really, but just things that kind of like complement and gel well together. If you've got that hierarchy of sample, and then if the sample isn't really quite working, maybe you need to tune it or something, change where it's sitting in the frequency spectrum. If that's not working, then maybe you can think about like filtering or like EQing or whatever. And then maybe you can think about like, okay, maybe we can make this pop a little bit more by adding a little bit of saturation or adding a little bit of compression or whatever. But a lot of the work is going to be done from a sample. So think of it at that triangle of that hierarchy of issues that you may have. Because yeah, in my experience with like working with these machines, you can get something that's sounding so fucking good before you touch any kind of processing. The processing after that, like, I feel like when you have every effect on your DAW at your fingertips and stuff, it's very easy to just be like, oh, that sample's fine, but I guess I'll just throw another loop on, and you're like, I guess that's fine, and you throw another loop on, and you throw like it through like a, I don't know, saturator, and then you resample it, and I don't know, stretch it out. Like it's very easy to go and get lost. So that's my tip for you. I hope this like helped in some way, but if you have any questions, let me know, because I definitely just breezed over a lot of topics here. That yeah, if you want some more stuff about the Digitakt, let me know. If you want some stuff about the MPC, I could probably help you out with that as well. But this thing is, that boy is just on its last leg, I'll tell you that. It's so battered up. Until then, chat to you later. Thanks for subscribing, and have a good day. Cheers.